You've asked what directors need to know about confined space hazards. Clearly depends on the size of the company and the nature of the company. A confined space is somewhere like a drain or a process vessel or something like a road tank where there might be toxic fumes, lack of oxygen, risk of drowning, similar sort of hazards to that. So the most common one that people come across is a conventional drain, where there's a manhole. And of course people can die entering those drains due to high levels of hydrogen sulfide, which virtually instantaneously fatal. It's the rotten eggs gas, but at high concentrations you stop smelling it and it paralyzes the respiratory center of the brain. I've dealt with many cases of confined space fatalities, and they quite often result in 2 or 3 people being killed. I acted as an expert witness in a case of an agricultural company which was storing apples in a warehouse prior to going to supermarkets. And the system they had was that the warehouse was sealed and it had controlled temperature, humidity and oxygen level. And the oxygen level was reduced to 1% to stop the fruit rotting. Now, 1% oxygen won't support life. We normally are breathing about 21%. And very low levels of oxygen don't cause you to be out of breath because your body responds to high carbon dioxide, not low oxygen. So you have no knowledge when you're in a low oxygen environment. You don't feel shortness of breath or anything. You just collapse and die. And the manager of this facility, who had taken a party of school children around the outside of it some months before this incident, said to the children, it's 1% oxygen in there. If you went in there, you'd be immediately dead. Now, in the top of this internal warehouse was a manhole hatch, about a metre square. And the idea was when you wanted to sample the apples, you opened the hatch and you lifted out a bag of apples from the top tray. But that wasn't good enough, this manager. He wanted to win fruit competitions. So he'd introduced a procedure where his staff, holding their breath, went in through the 1 square metre hatch and crawled across the top of the apples, looking for the optimum apple whilst holding their breath. And they'd been doing this for a number of years. They even had a term for it called scuba diving. And on this occasion, the first guy, who was in his mid-20s, went in. He must have perhaps tripped, sneezed, died. I think his colleague went in after him. They both died. It was a harrowing case, but again, an obvious hazard. Now, not everyone operates fruit farm facilities, but the same type of hazards can occur in a drain, a water tank, a process vessel if there aren't the right procedures, the training, the rescue arrangements in place. And these are fundamental points which have been known about for over 100 years. And each year we see several people die as a result of entering a confined space without the right precautions. So directors need to know that they have policies and systems in place, that either their people are not entering confined spaces and know why they shouldn't, or if they are, there's the right procedures in place of gas monitoring, ventilation, breathing apparatus and rescue arrangements. The result was a prosecution of the company, but also a prosecution of the manager concerned. The company didn't actually know this procedure was taking place, but they were prosecuted under confined spaces regulations. But the manager was jailed for gross negligence individual manslaughter. He was actually jailed for 2.5 years, but the sentencing guidelines have changed since that time, and he would currently get a sentence of between 12 and 18 years for the same offence.